Le peuple souverain a clamé qu'il voulait reprendre en main les rênes de son destin.
Marine Le Pen, leader of the National Front, speaking after the 2014 European elections when the anti-EU party picked up nearly a quarter of votes in France.
Nous voulons être maîtres chez nous, voilà. Et les Autrichiens veulent être maîtres en Autriche, les Français maîtres en France, les Belges maîtres en Belgique, et c'est tout à fait légitime.
Known simply as Marine to the people of France, she took over leadership of the far-right party in 2011, a mantle she inherited from her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, the fiery populist who brought the National Front to prominence. Since then, Marine has pushed to distance the party from her father's extreme rhetoric and recast it as a voter-friendly option for people frustrated with France's direction and traditional parties. Jean-Marie Le Pen helped found the National Front in 1972, uniting a number of smaller nationalist movements of the time.
Le comité du Front National m'a demandé à l'unanimité d'être dans ce grand débat le porte-parole et le porte-drapeau de la droite sociale, populaire et nationale.
In those days, Le Pen wore an eye patch after losing his left eye following an illness. He quickly became known for his heated anti-immigration rhetoric, calls for increased French birth rates, and the creation of a professional army. It would be 10 years before, quote, the hour that changed everything, as Le Pen referred to it, when for the first time he was interviewed on primetime television. Mainstream parties in France had moved to the centre ground, and following his TV appearance, the National Front found itself able to make political deals without having to soften its hardline position on key issues. But in 1987, Le Pen made a remark that would cast a shadow over him for the rest of his career. During an interview on French radio, he said that the use of gas chambers was just, quote, a detail in the history of World War II.
Je suis un passionné aussi par l'histoire de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale. Je me pose un certain nombre de questions et je ne dis pas que les chambres à gaz n'ont pas existé. Je n'ai pas pu moi-même en voir, je n'ai pas étudié spécialement la question, mais je crois que c'est un point de détail de l'histoire de la Deuxième Guerre mondiale.
Thousands gathered in protest outside the National Assembly in Paris, including Holocaust survivors wearing old concentration camp uniforms. Le Pen said he was being targeted by the media.
Cela justifie-t-il le procès de sorcier que l'on me fait dans la presse écrite, parlée et télévisée?
In the early 90s, the creation of the European Union promised a future that Le Pen rejected. The National Front, by now, was campaigning on an anti-Islamism platform. And when a Moroccan immigrant was killed by skinhead supporters of the party, Le Pen defended the contentious policy that immigrants be sent back to their home countries.
Je considère que mon pays n'a pas besoin d'immigrés, qu'il en a trop, et que tout doit être fait pour que les Français gardent leur spécificité, gardent leur autonomie, leur indépendance, leur souveraineté. Et je crois que le phénomène d'immigration met en péril l'équilibre de nos sociétés, et même leur existence.
By 1997, the National Front was the third strongest political party in France, but that was about to change. During the general election campaign that year, Le Pen visited the crime-plagued Paris suburb of Mantes-la-Jolie, where his eldest daughter, Marie-Caroline, was a candidate for the French Parliament. The protest organisation SCALP, or Absolutely Anti-Le Pen, turned out in force. Le Pen refused to be put off.
Moi, je suis un homme libre dans un pays libre, je me promène librement. Voilà. Et ceux qui veulent m'en empêcher, eh bien, je les pousse un peu. Voilà.
The protesters pursued Le Pen and around 30 of his supporters around town. Then, amongst the scuffles, Le Pen assaulted socialist candidate Annette Polvast-Bogéal. He was fined, given a 3-month suspended prison sentence, and banned from political life for 2 years. He remained defiant.
J'ai été la victime d'un véritable guet-apens politico-médiatique.
But the National Front was fracturing. In January 1999, a breakaway group led by Bruno Maigret founded the National Republican Movement. It tore the party in half. The National Front went into the new millennium with its lowest polling numbers in more than a decade. In 2002, Le Pen made a dramatic comeback. He became the first ever far-right candidate in a presidential runoff, campaigning for tough law and order policies and the death penalty. His campaign included a visit to Argenteuil, a poor suburb with a large immigrant population.
Je n'oublierai pas vos problèmes et j'y remédierai. Tous vous ont promis la lune et regardez là où ils vous ont mené. Moi, je tiendrai mes promesses car je suis un homme d'honneur.
But his dismissive remarks about the Holocaust continued, and widespread anti-Le Pen protests were commonplace. Chirac won the presidential election with 82.2% of the vote, and with 71% of those votes, according to polls, cast simply to block Le Pen. In 2011, 82-year-old Le Pen finally stepped down as leader of the party he founded nearly 40 years ago.
Vive la France! Vive le Front National!
A day later, his daughter Marine was elected party leader.
Vive le Front National! Vive la République! Vive la France!
A year later, in 2012, following the local elections, the National Front returned to Parliament.
Avec 25 ans d'absence illégitime et antidémocratique au Parlement, malgré son incontestable représentativité durant toutes ces années, le mouvement national fait à nouveau son entrée à l'Assemblée.
In June 2015, a year after the party's success in the European elections, the National Front brought together 7 European parties to form Europe of Nations and Freedoms. The new far-right bloc says it will use its collective voice to fight against mass immigration and defend national interest, culture and identity, principles that the group believes have been undermined by the European Union.